Story 1 by Wayne F. Rewritten. This tale unfolded several years back in early October when I had a 2-week hiatus from work. I embarked on a journey to a cabin nestled in the hills outside my city, an Airbnb tucked away in seclusion. The remoteness appealed to me as I had a desire to spend a few days camping. After a 2-hour drive, I arrived at the cabin in the afternoon. The surroundings were tranquil and serene, with no other cabins or structures in sight, just the expansive woods enveloping the area. Upon settling in, I explored the cabin's rooms, finding it to have a quaint, old-fashioned ambiance. While not entirely to my liking, it provided a refreshing change of environment for a vacation. The subsequent nights and the following days passed uneventfully, with my time split between leisurely activities outdoors in the brisk fall weather and cozy nights spent by the fireplace. On the 5th day, I embarked on a camping excursion with my gear. Uncertain of the duration, I planned for 2 to 3 nights. There were a couple of trails nearby, but for simplicity, I chose the one directly connected to the cabin. After walking for at least 3 to 4 hours, I found a suitable spot, the sole clearing besides the trail. However, camping directly on the path felt uneasy, so as night approached, I pitched my tent and kindled a fire. As darkness fell, I donned a heavy sweater and jacket, combating the encroaching cold. I sat by the fire for an hour, consuming a quick meal and waiting to grow sleepier. It was during this time that my eyes caught sight of a figure walking in the woods, no flashlight, just disappearing into the distance. The only illumination in the woods was my campfire and the dim moonlight, making it evident that the person had seen me. The peculiar way they traversed the woods, without light and off the trail, left me unnerved. The thought of retracing my steps back to the cabin crossed my mind, but the lateness of the hour made it unsafe. Remaining vigilant for half an hour yielded no further signs of the mysterious figure. Growing tired, I extinguished the fire, but as the glow faded into ashes, footsteps emerged from the left of the campsite. My eyes widened, straining to adjust to the darkness, revealing only a few feet ahead. The footsteps approached, seemingly just beyond my line of sight. They veered slightly off, remaining in the shadows, passing by and fading into the distance. They neither acknowledged my presence nor stopped. Once the footsteps vanished, I retrieved my flashlight, disassembled my tent, and packed my belongings, returning to the trail. It wasn't ideal, but a sense of unease lingered. Walking briskly, flashlight illuminating the trail, I struggled to maintain composure in the unsettling silence of the woods. Despite my reservations, I made it back to the cabin well into the night. Exhausted from the day's walk and lacking sleep, I collapsed on the couch, my foggy mind momentarily forgetting the person in the woods. However, my groggy state was abruptly disrupted by an unusual sound from the other side of the cabin, wood scraping against the walls. My eyes shot open, and I turned to face the back of the room, witnessing the window slowly being pushed open by a man outside. His eyes met mine as I stood up, and he hastily dropped the window, disappearing into the woods. I gathered my belongings, leaving the cabin and driving to a nearby town's hotel. The identity and motives of the man remained unknown, but it was evident he had followed me and attempted to enter the cabin while I slept. The potential consequences, if he had succeeded, were left to the imagination. Story 2 by Anonymous happened. This happened last fall. It was toward the end of the season, closer to winter. And where I live, it gets pretty cold and even snow sometimes in October. I've been doing food delivery for the past 3 years and was working on this night. It was around 1 p.m. and lightly snowing outside. It was one of the first snowfalls, so people must have been skittish to go out. I was one of few cars driving around, but a lot of orders were coming in. Pretty much as soon as I'd finish one would pop up after driving around everywhere until almost 1 a.m. I took up one last order. The snow was starting to pick up, and I was just getting a little tired. I drove through the McDonald's that they'd ordered from and picked up the food, then set in the directions to the house. It was close, about 10 minutes away, but I didn't consider the direction. It was in before accepting the order. It was opposite from where I lived, and I was already a good 25 minutes from home, so it was going to be a long drive home afterward. Annoyed at myself, I turned out of the parking lot and onto the road. The plow trucks still weren't out yet, probably because they weren't expecting this much downfall, but my SUV was usually good in the snow, so I wasn't that nervous while I was driving. I noticed the road I was heading down was about to leave the main area of town. I checked the map again, and it said it was this way, but it was just a very unusual route. I didn't even know any houses were down there, because the only reason people take the road is to get to the highway that leads out of state. I went down for a few minutes, seeing only streetlights and trees until I came up to the turn. It was a single small street leading off the road. I slowed down, being more careful since this street was smaller and had trees lined up right beside it, so sliding off would make a really terrible night. As I made my way down, I saw a few long driveways leading to faint lights in the trees far out. Before I reached the driveway I was to turn down, it looks like all the others. I slowly drove through the driveway until I made it to the house. It was medium-sized and older, completely covered in snow. Nothing looked too notable about it, really. The only interesting thing was that it was out here in the middle of some forest. I parked out front and got the bag, then started walking up to the door. The snow was thicker than I would have liked, soaking my shoes and even the lower legs of my pants. When I got up to the porch, I knocked and started to set the bag down, but almost immediately the door swung open. I looked up, seeing a large man in a winter jacket. His face was pale, like he'd just been outside in the cold old high. "I got your order right here," I said, holding the bag up after a moment. The man stepped back and opened the door wider. "You can set it down right over there." He lifted his arm and pointed toward what I assume was the kitchen. The way he said it made me feel like I had to, but I knew it was a horrible idea to go in there. I looked at the man's hands, seeing he wasn't holding anything, so it really didn't make any sense for me to do anything other than hand him the bag. "Sorry, but I really have to get going," I said nervously, holding the bag up again. The man's face dropped into a frown. Then he suddenly slammed the door shut, still holding the bag up and just a bit shocked by what was happening. I set it down on the porch and quickly started walking back to my car. But just as I got past the front yard, I heard something from behind me. I turned around, realizing it was from somewhere on the other side of the house. It could have been a back door or something, but was too muffled to hear clearly. Getting creeped out, I walked quicker and got in my car. I switched it on, and right as I looked up, I saw the man coming around the side of his house and making his way quickly over to my car. He had something in his hands. It almost looked like rope, but there was something else that I wasn't able to make out. I suddenly felt my heartbeat spike and adrenaline take over my body. I started going in reverse, trying my hardest to go quick while also not getting stuck in the snow. The man got close, probably just a few feet away, before my car was able to grip the road and start picking up some speed. I backed up through the whole driveway, seeing the man eventually stop and watch, slowly fading into the dark as I backed up into the street. I don't know what he was doing, honestly. The whole thing was just terrifying and confusing enough to make me not even want to think about it. I still do food deliveries, but I'm far more cautious, and most of the time I don't even knock on the doors anymore. I just drop the food on the porch and leave. Had I stayed any longer that night, or had entered the house, who knows what would have happened to. Story 3 by Brandon A. Me. It was a couple days before Halloween. I actually had the next few days off. So after I got off work, I was looking forward to staying up late and enjoying the night. I picked up some fast food on the way home, eating on the couch while watching some Netflix. About 30 minutes into the show, I paused it and got up to throw out the rest of the food that I hadn't finished. I walked into the kitchen and tossed it, but when I turned around, I saw someone standing in my backyard. They were just looking at my house, not really doing anything else. For context, my backyard was small but fenced in, so there was no way he just stumbled through while taking a shortcut or something. I flipped on the back porch light and slid the door open. "Hey, what are you doing?" I yelled at them. With the porch light now on, I could see their face. They were young, probably in their 20s, but had really tired, and for lack of a better word, creepy eyes. They didn't respond to me. So I called out again, "You need to leave, this is my property." The guy looked over at me, then casually started walking toward the gate. I made sure they left, going to my front window, and watched them walk down the street once he had left. I just took a moment to think about what was going on. It was such an odd thing. Why was he even standing in my backyard? To begin with, he was just staring at my house for seemingly no reason. I even went as far as to go out into my backyard and stand in the same place. He was looking up at my house to see what he could have been looking at, but there really wasn't anything. I went back inside and tried to forget it. I didn't really know what else to do. I poured myself a drink and sat back down playing the show. I'd finished the episode and just started the next one, so maybe 20 minutes had gone by before I heard a few subtle footsteps running in my backyard, followed by a thud against my house. I stood up and ran to the kitchen, seeing that same guy now against my back door. He was pushing his body against it and aggressively trying to pull it open. I grabbed the handle just in case he somehow got through the lock, but seeing the rage in his eyes close up was horrifying. I backed away and got my phone calling the police as I stood in the kitchen and watched this guy continue trying to get in, but then he just stopped. He stared at me through the glass door, breathing heavily and still having that crazed look in his eyes. Then he walked back to the gate, but this time, he didn't walk away. He stayed somewhere on the side of the house like he was hiding. I constantly went back and forth from all the windows, waiting for the police to arrive and hoping the guy didn't try anything else. 5 minutes went by with no sounds or movement before a police car showed up right away. I heard footsteps running from the side of the house, but not away from the house. They ran back up to the door trying to force it open again. They chose to attempt breaking in again, rather than taking their chances. Running away, obviously police were able to get him in the act, and after a quick struggle, they got him cuffed and into the car. When questioned, it was very apparent that the guy was under the influence of something heavy, and it was later confirmed with some tests despite questioning him that night. And in the following days, when he was sober, the man never gave actual reasons for his actions. I'm unsure how to feel about it. Part of me sees it as just some crazy guy that had no reason, so why worry about it? But then a part of me thinks of the look in his eyes and the fact that he tried to break in over running away means he had to have had a reason. And either way, if he had gotten in, what he would have tried to do to me is likely just as horrifying reason or not. As far as I know, he was only imprisoned for a few weeks due to not being sober during his actions. So I'm left to just worry about whether or not he intends on coming back for